You have surely heard about the intelligence quotient, short IQ, as well as the emotional intelligence, EQ. There's another form of intelligence, cultural intelligence, in short CQ. And without cultural intelligence, even the smartest people fail when going abroad. I'm Manuel Marcel Mohnhoff. I have worked and lived in 7 different countries. I have worked in international teams, I have led international teams, and I have built organizations in different countries. In this video, I want to deep dive into cultural intelligence so that you understand how you can build your own cultural intelligence. And I will also show you some very practical examples from my experience working in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Why does cultural intelligence matter? Cultural intelligence is less about certain manners and etiquette. Yes, that is part of it, but it goes much deeper. Cultural intelligence is about 3 aspects: awareness, adaptability, and action. Number 1, awareness, often also referred to cognitive cultural intelligence. This is about knowing. And how do we know? By observing, by not rushing into action, but really observing and learning how things are being handled, discussed, and put into action differently across the cultures. The second part, adaptation. And it has a very deep intrinsic part to it. It must come from deep within yourself, like a childlike curiosity to understand your fellow citizens in another country. Number 3, action. It stems from turning our observations, our awareness, as well as our intrinsic motivation, our curiosity, into tangible results. And this is a very practical part. It's all about how do we communicate? How do we take decisions? How do we document? How do we drive positive change? Now I will share with you some practical examples from my experiences working in the different cultures and countries. For that, I will use the framework of Erin Meyer, who wrote the fabulous book, The Culture Map. She developed 8 different scales, and each of these scales defines one specific part of a culture. And then every culture, every country can be placed on this scale in one or the other direction with 2 extremes. First part is communication. On one side we have the low context cultures, and on the other side we have the high context cultures. The low context cultures say what they mean directly. It's a very direct communication, so you can take it by face value. These are cultures such as Swiss, German, as well as North Americans, and the Nigerians are somewhere in between, and the Kenyans are again a bit more to the higher context cultures, where you have predominantly the Asian cultures. A lot has to be read between the lines. Not everything is being said, and you really have to develop a sensitivity to be able to read the room and read between the lines. So it's very unlikely that you, for example, will get direct negative feedback. If you misinterpret the signs, you will ask yourself, why did the client not pursue the project? It is really a great learning for us as Westerners to learn this sensitivity and to develop our antennas to be able to read between the lines. The second part is evaluation. How do we give negative feedback? Here again, we have a spectrum from those who give negative feedback directly, and those cultures who give negative feedback in an indirect way. Direct feedback cultures are the Central European cultures as well as the North American cultures. If you have a boss, for example, from Switzerland or from Germany, and you do something wrong, most likely he or she will directly give you negative feedback also in front of a group. And then we have the Asian cultures. And you might have heard about the concept of face. You can give and take face, especially in the public sphere. If you would correct somebody in a meeting or you would give negative feedback in front of others, this will take face from him or her. And this can be quite hurtful in these cultures. The third one is persuasion. There we have cultures who prefer to learn about the principles first and those who want to learn first about the application. Principles first means I want to understand how did you arrive to that conclusion? For example, what were your test parameters? Where is the data coming from? How did you interpret the data to come to a certain conclusion? And these examples are especially German cultures, Swiss cultures, where understanding the background plays a role and then you come to a conclusion at the end. In the North American cultures, for example, it's completely opposite. It's always application first. If you have been with McKinsey, you will learn something called top-down communication. And it's a very North American model. You first say, this is my conclusion, this is the headline, boom. Then you are coming to the details, if at all, if there's a request, how you have come to that conclusion and what are the data sets underlying that conclusion. There is a certain hierarchical component to it. Imagine you are a CEO of a company. You get so many data points, so many presentations. You don't have the appetite and the attention span to go through all the details. So you need to get the most important information first, and then you can drill down with questions if needed. Consider that in your communication, depending not only on the culture, but also the hierarchical level of your audience. Fourth path is leading. So there is the hierarchical and the non-hierarchical side. This is pretty self-explaining. Non-hierarchical means people are more on eye level. You can reach out to people easily in the organization. If needed, you can even skip hierarchical levels. So there are a lot of nuances to this. For example, the Swiss people. When you compare them to their neighbors, Germans are much more hierarchical. Look at the history of Switzerland and really this democracy that's so old. You will also understand why there's a more consensual approach to decision making in Switzerland than in Germany. The Asian cultures like China and Japan are also very hierarchical, as well as most African cultures. They are top-down driven, so what the boss says will be done. The fifth point, which is decision making. Consensual decision making on one side of the spectrum and then the top-down decision on the other side. And there's a correlation, of course, with hierarchy, but it's still a bit different. For example, the Japanese culture is very hierarchical, but the decision making is still consensual. In Japanese culture, there's a lot of pre-alignments. Before the actual meeting is happening, it's very important to get to know each stakeholder's opinion and each stakeholder's interest and align them among each other so that in the official meeting, even the boss might take the decision, but he will definitely consider the inputs of his team. This is actually a good tip across all cultures, especially when you have many stakeholders involved. Don't wait for decision making in a meeting. You have to do your homework, align with all the people, get a pre-alignment so that when you are sitting in the big meeting and there are so many high stakes involved that everybody is basically just saying yes because everything was already agreed. This will help you to avoid bad situations, and it will also show that you can take leadership across different cultures, across different stakeholders and interest groups. The sixth point is trust. Trust can either be task-based or relationship-based. Task-based means I might trust you with running my business, but I don't trust you to look after my 2-year-old daughter. And this you have mostly in Western cultures, where trust has to be earned by being able to show results. I might trust you with my business because I know you have been doing this for a long time, you have a good CV, and I cross-checked your references. But I don't know if you are good with kids and if I can trust you with my child. So that is again a different part. I might trust my neighbor or an au pair who helps me because I know that he or she is kind of specialized in that, have been doing that for quite some time and I have a good feeling about it. And then you have the relationship-based approach. Either I trust you as a person or I don't trust you. And if I trust you as a person, I don't need to know all the details. I don't need to see all the certifications or everything that qualifies you to do a certain task or not. I trust you as a person. And usually, when you look at the time span, is task-based trust can be given faster because it's task-specific. It's limited in its scope, and it usually grows step by step the more has been accomplished, the more the trust has been proven right. The relationship-based trust is a slower process, and often it's really not about the topic, but it's really about getting to know that person, letting your guards down, opening up, building the relationship. And if this level of the relationship, if this rapport is established, then everything else from there is downhill. And it will also encompass all aspects. Often a mistake that Westerners do in Asian cultures is they directly want to get to the table, right? There's a contract, everything has been discussed, let's do it. This is often not that much appreciated, and it's actually, ooh, wow, let's first build rapport. And Westerners might not understand, why do we spend so much time and money and resources and joint dinners in going to some sightseeing together or going to KTV, all these kind of things where maybe the Westerner would think, hey, this is not really business related, I want to do business. But it's part of business in Asian cultures. It's very important. The same also in African cultures. It's much more relationship based. I trust you because maybe you're part of a family, or I know somebody from your family. And if I trust you, we can move things together. In a low trust environment, as Africa is in general, Nigeria is, the first thing, my default mode is, I will not trust you. But then we will build a relationship, and then things will move freely, and everything afterwards, the whole contractual part, the whole legal part that's usually very big and very prevalent in Western cultures, is much less important in African and Asian cultures. The 8th point is disagreement. How do we disagree? Do we disagree in a confrontational way on the one end of the spectrum, or do we disagree in a non-confrontational way? And here Germany is quite extreme in favoring confrontational discussion. Doesn't mean that people fight always or physically, but it's really that people can exchange opinions and people can really challenge each other's opinions before coming to a conclusion. Still on the confrontational side, but a little bit less pronounced, you have the United States. On the complete opposite, again, you have most of the Asian cultures. The last part is about scheduling, or how do cultures perceive time. On one hand side, we have linear time, and on the other side, we have flexible time. Linear time is exactly the time how it is on your watch. And here you have cultures, especially Swiss and German culture, where punctuality is a sign of respect. If I'm not on time in Germany or Switzerland, this indirectly communicates I don't respect your time. I take away from you your most valuable resource. On the other hand, you have flexible timing. The most flexible timing I've ever experienced is in Africa, especially in Nigeria, where when you have an invitation to a private event, often it's a wedding, let's say it starts around 11 a.m. in the morning, never show up at 11 a.m. There will be nobody, and probably also the host will not be ready yet. People come whenever they like, often 5, 6, 7 hours late. Always be aware of that when you are invited, and as well when you invite yourself. If you invite for an evening activity at your home, invite at least with 2 hours anticipation. So you want your guests to arrive at 7, invite for 5. And probably if you're foreign friends, they will arrive at 5, and the African friends will arrive much later. Here you can really see the linear timing. I believe it also is a different aspect to it. And the more, let's say, professional environment gets, the more business-oriented environment gets, the more linear timing becomes crucial, especially working across time zones, working in a professional context. Our lives are just dictated by the time. And now I also want to pinpoint some very interesting parts. Often we think, okay, Europe, Asia, very far away. Of course they are different. But when you look at the cultural similarities between Central European countries, and I'm now clubbing together Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and you compare it to Japan, you have a lot of similarities in terms of hierarchical approach, decision making, understanding of time. Then you have other Asian cultures which are more different, let's say with China. But even there, the more globalization happens and the more the cultures are working together, also the more there is a common understanding. And that is also the great thing. If you as a foreigner do a mistake, an etiquette mistake, for example, in a Chinese business dinner, you always have the foreigner card, meaning people will say, oof, yeah, he's new, he's a foreigner, it's okay. He didn't mean it like that. If you would be a local or if you would be a Chinese from overseas, you would have a much tougher assessment. So that's always keep in mind. But at the same time, you can really have a bonus if you as a foreigner understand and really appreciate the culture and try to show your appreciation of that culture by indulging in that culture, by taking up parts of that culture and integrating it in your identity. That definitely tells, and it helps you to maneuver across cultures and get things done. So why does all of this matter? Companies recruit and promote not only on technical expertise, but also on the ability to be a bridge builder between cultures, especially when you're working for a big international company. It's so crucial to be that linchpin, and it can give you a lot of career growth and a lot of value within a company if you can be that bridge builder, and if the perception of you is that you are the man or the woman to go to when many different stakeholders, many different cultures work together. To summarize, cultural intelligence has the 3 A's. First one is awareness, to observe and to reflect, to be able to understand foreign cultures. The second A is adaptation, to have the intrinsic motivation and the childlike curiosity to learn more about it and to really make this host culture part of your own identity as you immerse yourself in the culture. And the third one is action, how to take this motivation plus the awareness and the knowledge that you have built up and turn it into action when working in a multicultural context. If this topic resonates with you, make sure that you follow and subscribe for more. I share one video each week to help professionals build global careers and achieve financial independence.